Welcome everyone to the June 6th edition of the Vancouver Power BI and Modern Excel User Group Meetup. I cannot believe that it is already June 2024. I don't know how this time keeps on getting faster and faster every year, but here we go. So just to kick off and do a quick intro here, as we always do, I do want to throw out a quick shout out to the sponsors. They're the ones that make all of these things happen. I mean, obviously we couldn't have a meetup without a speaker, but it's also the sponsors that do all the organization at their time. So we always encourage you to go and check those out. Skillwave is our title sponsor for the session here. You can find them at skillwave.training. Skillwave is also owned and run by Excel Guru, which is my company as well, and the distributor of my Monkey Tools add-in. Our next meetups that we have coming up in 2 weeks, we've got Gregor Brunner is going to be joining us. This again is going to be an early start time, 9 a.m. Pacific time. He's going to be talking about Measure Killer 2.0, a nice little add-on that he's built for Power BI. So you definitely want to come and check that out. And then our next Excel meetup, we've got Rick de Groot is going to be joining us. You'll notice again, this is another early time because Rick's going to be joining us from the Netherlands. Now, I don't know exactly what Rick is going to be talking about, but I know Rick well enough to know that he's just published a big book on advanced M, and it's going to be something to do with Power Query in the M language. So that should be a fantastically interesting session as well. So don't forget to sign up for those. And remember, they are both early start times on the West Coast, 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Respectively. Just a quick note here that yesterday I published a new build of Monkey Tools. If you haven't got this on your desktop yet and you work with Excel and Power Query and Power Pivot, you definitely should have it. A couple of cool things that we've done here. I've added some new updates to the BiblioMonkey. The first one was actually a user request for a search feature in the BiblioMonkey, to which I got to be honest, I responded, really? Like, can't you just stick your things in folders? To which the response I got was, yes, Ken, but I have over 400 Lambda signatures stored in my BiblioMonkey. After I fell off my chair and went, holy cow, that's a lot of Lambda functions, I said, I guess you need a search function. So we built one in. You can now find one in BiblioMonkey. It works in all versions, super easy to use. You just type in a partial string and boom, it filters everything down for you when you hit the tab key. So a nice little search feature in there. We've also added, again, at user request, some new tags in the BiblioMonkey. You can now tag your queries and your formulas with Excel tables, named ranges and arrays. In your formulas, you can do full row, full column, as well as the tables, named ranges and arrays as well. So there's a few more tags there to make your formulas a little bit more robust. Not on the slide, I've also added the ability to call Excel tables, named ranges, and queries from Python formulas, because those the ability to read from Python directly from Power Query is now available in beta. So we're waiting for that to roll out to everybody, but we've got it all hooked up and ready to go in Monkey Tools. In addition, there's a variety of bug fixes, UI enhancements for consistency and usability. I've been doing a lot of these things as I've been recording my Using Monkey Tools video series, and I find some things that I just don't like the way they're working, so I'll correct them, and those have all been rolled into this latest build. If you're interested in seeing how Monkey Tools works, you should definitely check out this playlist that we have on YouTube, where you can find out a lot of bite-sized videos on how Monkey Tools can help you be more effective, how you can use it, and they're getting a lot of positive response from people. So like Donald, who just said in the chat that he's been enjoying the new Monkey Tools videos. Thank you, Donald, appreciate that. So yeah, definitely check those out. So speaking of that Monkey Tools video series, the featured episodes that we have right now, these have all been released within the last couple of weeks. We show you how Monkey Tools can easily modify your model to create a type 2 slowly changing dimension. If you know what that is, you'll know how hard that is to do. If you don't, well, come take one of my classes on dimensional modeling. I'll teach you. Query Sleuth, we've got a good overview on that. It can help you trace your queries and make some light modifications, indent your M code, things like that. Time Sleuth, one of some people's favorite feature here, we can actually chart the refresh times of different queries to compare them. There's a great video in there on that, so you can see how it all works. And then Pivot Sleuth, you know, it's funny, I was actually just in a discussion a couple of weeks ago with one of my colleagues asking why can't we get rid of that stupid message about relationships maybe needed in pivot tables, to which my response, framed much more eloquently, was essentially, well, if you do it right, you don't have that problem. Pivot Sleuth allows you to look at your pivot table and say what's not right about it so that you can actually solve that problem forever. So nice little tool there that makes life a little bit easier. Again, you can download your copy of Monkey Tools there, or you can subscribe to the playlist here. All right. If you are looking for fantastic training on Excel, there is no better place to go and start than at my Excel Fundamentals Bootcamp. This will get you ready with Power Query, with pivot tables, data visualizations, and more. Gives you access to up to 23 sessions where you can ask me questions during the year in my live office hours and a whole bunch of other things. This is really an ideal program for people who want to fill in gaps in their basic Excel knowledge and get prepped with Power Query and pivot tables so that they're ready to move on to the next big thing. The next big thing, of course, being my self-service business intelligence bootcamp, where we teach you how to do dimensional modeling. We teach you how to build Power Pivot, DAX. We teach you how to work with Power BI, including row-level security and setting up for multi-user use and deployment and multi-user creation and maintenance environments. All kinds of good things in there. Gives you access to Monkey Tools, gives you access to books, all kinds of great stuff there, as well as my coaching sessions that we have during the year. If you're interested, you should definitely check this out. You should also know that for both of these programs, we actually will come and do them in-house in your organization as well. If you're interested in that, just go take a look at the links here, drop us a note, and we can work to set something up with you as well. This meetup, along with every meetup, is recorded and will be hosted on the SkillWave YouTube channel. Once it is live, I will shoot a note into the meetup, into the meetup portal, so you will get a notification to let you know when it is ready. Usually takes me between 24 to 48 hours, depending on what I've got going on. Sometimes it takes me till the following Monday, but trust me, I will post as soon as it's available. We also have some Monkey Shorts videos. These are 3 minutes or less of technical content. If you want to learn how Excel's let function is awesome, just like DAX's var function, you can see that in one of our episodes there, as well as how to build one of my favorites, what I like to refer to as the FU variants, to explain whether something's favorable or unfavorable. There's a great little trick there to make your models and your documents a little bit more engaging for your audience and have a little fun with them to make sure that they never ask you what positive and negative ever mean again. Finally, if you would like to get involved with the Meetup group and come and speak to us, we would love to have you. Fill out this little form, this little survey that we have here. Again, remember, all of these slides with all these links are already uploaded onto the Meetup site, so you can grab them there. But definitely fill out the form. We'd love to get new speakers. We'd love to have you on our platform. And as you'll see today, it's always a fun place to come and participate and see what's going on and share what you're doing. And now it's time to welcome our speaker, Jakob Nielsen. He is going to talk to us about speeding up your Excel filters with List Slicer, which is an add-in that Jakob has actually built using the new Office.js framework. So, Jakob, I am going to turn it over to you here. I'll stop sharing my screen and let you take over, and let's talk about List Slicer.
Thank you so much, Ken. Just let me get my presentation going here. I have a few slides with an introduction and a session overview before I get started on the demos. I have 6 demos lined up for you, and so most of it will be demos and not slides. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm a designer in the Excel team in Seattle. I've been with Microsoft for a while. I've worked across consulting, Dynamics, SharePoint, Office, and now Excel. One of the things that's happened recently in my work life is that I decided to go part-time in the beginning of last year. So I'm super privileged to have a job at Microsoft where I spend 3 days a week thinking about Excel and Excel users and designing Excel. And I also have 2 days to sort of experiment with what else I can do in my work life. And so far, it's led to the creation of a very small one-person business called Make Digital Solutions that I founded last year. My focus there is to help people become more productive and achieve better results with spreadsheets. And I do that in 2 ways. One way is developing Excel add-ins, and List Slicer is my very first add-in that I have in the Microsoft Marketplace. And I also do consulting engagements, but the main interest for now is really the Excel add-ins. So that's what I'm excited to come and present to you today. There's 2 parts to my presentation. First, I'll do a demo of the list slicer add-in and sort of set the stage for that. I'll show you how to install it in your Excel, and then after that, show some more advanced examples of how it can be used. The second part of this is a bit more technical. It goes into how you would actually develop a modern Excel add-in using the JavaScript framework. And I'll do a demo of how to get started developing these add-ins, and we'll drill into look at the code and make some changes to the start template that we're using to start the project. I hope you will think this is fun to see both of the things, and I really encourage you to ask questions in the chat along the way, and we'll make sure that we stop for questions when there are any. So let's just move right ahead and look at this slicer. And I want to start out by basically doing a demo. So let me switch to Windows Excel. This could also have been Excel on the web, or it could have been Excel on Mac. List slicer work in all three of them. And with this, I have a workbook where I have some data. It's organized in three different ways. I have a pivot table, as we see in front of us here. I also, in the workbook, have a table with the same data. It's the data that's the source data for the pivot table. And then finally, I have a range of data. So it's just to demonstrate that list slicer can actually be used with order filters on ranges as well. What you might have noticed is that common for all of these three is that there's things like the product ID. That's a sort of a common column in this. And where list slicer fits in is really being able to filter efficiently on those columns. So I have a list of 5 random product IDs from this data. And if I wanted to use if I was limited to using the Excel built-in UI, it's actually quite cumbersome to set a filter that puts the criteria in to just show these 5. And you can imagine that if this was more complex IDs or longer, or for example, email addresses or anything that is an ID, it takes some time to use the Excel UI. With list slicer, and I've already created a worksheet that has list slicer here. It's basically a slicer that allows you to take a list of IDs and paste that into that slicer. Once you've done that, and you can imagine that you got this list either by scanning in the IDs with a barcode scanner, or you maybe got them in email or some other way, you can basically just hit apply, and it applies the filter. I don't think you can accomplish this any quicker and more reliably with the built-in Excel UI. That, of course, just to repeat this, works again with a table. So now showing the same thing just with the table. Of course, it shows more rows here because there's the product IDs are multiple times in this table. And then finally doing the same thing with the range. Essentially, that is what list slicer does. Helps you quickly set filters when you already know the list of items that you want in the filter. And of course, you can go modify this and so on. So that was demo number 1. Let me show you how you get list slicer. And I actually encourage you to we'll stop to do a little bit of a hands-on, But I wanted to show you how you get list slicer and get going with list slicer. So for that, I'm just doing a completely blank new workbook. There's no data here in that workbook. If you do the same, there's not any data that will be impacted or anything that will be messed with if you try to do the same thing. So in order to get list slicer is in the Microsoft marketplace called AppSource. And there's a button called add-ins in all versions of Excel. If you click that button and you search for list slicer, I already have it installed, so it's part of my add-ins. But I can also go to the more add-ins and get a more full store experience. And in this, I'm just gonna say list slicer and search for that, and it comes up as one of the options here. And I basically just click add. Once I do that, it asks me to consent to the license terms for this, and also to the privacy policy, which is on my website. If you click continue, it'll add a shape to your worksheet. That is the list slicer. If you do the same thing now, it will ask you for the first time to sign in to list slicer with your Microsoft identity, either a work or school identity or Microsoft account identity. The list slicer supports single sign-on, so it has already used my identity that I'm signed in with in Office, so I don't need to do that. And list slicer is now basically ready to be used. The first step here is to select a pivot table or a table or a worksheet that we want to filter, but I don't have any data in this particular workbook. So we can just use this try an example button that will basically set up an example for us. So what it did here is that it added a table with some data, the data that you've already seen, and then it added the pivot table. And I can go, modify this list if I want, and then apply the filter. And of course, delete the filter and so on. So that's basically it. I would, for you to get the same experience, I would actually encourage you to go and try this. The steps are here. Go do a new blank workbook either on Excel for Windows, Mac, or on the web. Go to add-ins on the Home tab. Go to more add-ins, search for list slicer, and then click add. And then once you are signed in, do try an example. We can give this a little bit of time so that you all have a chance to do this. Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I see, and this is I'm sure we'll end up talking about this when we get to part 2 of the presentation as well. But I see a few common of people that are actually trying to install it, and they're blocked by company admin, needs admin access, admin approval required, which is unfortunate for folks. Yeah, Office add-ins are blocked in my corporate walker. Or is there a way to install it the old-fashioned way?
There is not a way to install it the old-fashioned way if you think about it as copying a file to your computer and then getting it running that way. It requires either access to the add-ins dialog, and yes, that can be turned off by admins. However, there's also a way that your Microsoft 365 tenant admin can deploy the add-in in a centralized fashion, where they basically have in the admin portal for Microsoft 365, there's a page there called Integrated Apps. You can go in there and search for list slicer, as an admin and basically add it in a similar way similar to what I just demonstrated. And then you can assign it to either a set of users or a group of users or all users in the tenant. So if you don't have ability to add add-ins directly in Excel, that's perhaps an option for you. I'm actually curious about how many of you have blocked access to the add-in dialog. So maybe you can tell me in the chat, and I can review that afterwards, because
I see at least 3, but I don't know how many people. 4, there we go. I don't know how many people have successfully managed to install it either. So I mean, if you were successful, please drop in drop a note into the chat as well.
Yeah.
But for right now, I've got 3 in a row for blocked. So it definitely is a challenge for some people, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, this is fairly straightforward to do. It's like a maximum of 5 minutes task to do for an admin. So I can imagine like doing a support request in your system, and either talking to your Microsoft 365 admin directly or do a support request within your organization. You should be able to run it from there, or get it running for you. Are there any other questions, Ken? Did anyone succeed in getting it installed?
Yeah, no other questions yet. I think somebody did, but yeah. So there is a comment from here. It's basically IT won't do that. That's the problem. So somebody says, after it's installed, can you share the file with someone who doesn't have it installed?
Yes, you can. The add-in will insert itself into the file, and when the other user that you share the file with opens the file, it will attempt to install the add-in. Of course, that user needs to have access to install add-in or already have it installed by the Microsoft 365 admin. So yes, the file can be shared with the add-in there. If the user chooses not to consent to the add-in, it won't do any harm. The file will work as it's always worked. It's not like it will block you on anything or there.
Okay, I just threw a quick poll into the meeting as well, just to try and get for folks that did try to install it, just so we can try and get a response on that as to whether or not they were blocked or not. We've only got 5 votes, but if anybody else has tried it, let's find out. Ron, your question about why does it require an MS sign-in? I just want to confirm that that's actually related to List Slicer and not the poll that I just threw out. So if you can just confirm on that one that your question is around that. But Jakob, why does List Slicer require an Microsoft sign-in?
It requires a sign-in for the first time, because that's the only way I can keep track of the preview subscription that you get when you use the List Slicer for the first time, and then eventually also keep track of subscriptions once you decide to subscribe to List Slicer. It's only the first time that you need to sign in. After that, it will automatically sign you in using single sign-on. Or if your admin has installed the add-in for you, you will not be required to sign in at all.
All right. Just a comment from Jim on the IT side. He says, I mean, implementation might be easy, but the corporate approval process for security reviews and everything else prior to implementation is the problem in his organization. Which, I mean, is fair comment.
Yeah. I'm fully aware of that, and it's really
it's the framework, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit also on Microsoft to educate IT on what these add-ins actually are. because the add-ins, and we can talk more about that when we go and see how you actually develop one and what that is actually similar to a web page. So to my knowledge, it's not, in most organizations, I think you can browse to a web page without getting admin approval of that. So it's very specific what the add-in can do. It doesn't have the same characteristics as add-ins that we know of from the past. But I think there's maybe a gap in knowledge about what it really is. Okay, how about we continue and look at some more demos of ListLizer? Is that okay, Ken?
Yep, that sounds like a plan for sure.
Okay, good. So let's switch back to the demo workbook that we had. Of course, you've basically seen the main scenario that ListLizer is intended for, but of course you can sort of elaborate on that. And one of the things that's been added to ListLizer as a feature is actually the ability to do wildcards in the searches. So wildcards are the asterisks and the question marks, and if you put those into the criteria here. So for example, if I say star, bike, star, and apply that, then I get all the things that have bike in them in the list here. And of course I can say, that was fine, but I am really not interested in anything mountain that starts with mountain. So this is another, there's a show me everything that is not, that has bike in it, but not mountain bikes. That's basically what I get here. And of course I can, add to this and say, but I also want everything that begins with shorts or ends with shorts. Oops, shorts here. And I can add to the list, and I can repeat that and say, but not, oops. My keyboard is challenging here. Not anything that starts with bib. So that's sort of a feature, and I think that if you are familiar with the Excel UI to set filters, that we are already now specifying a filter that's more advanced than what you can actually specify with the sort of the basic filter functionality in Excel with what we have here and what we built up. So that was wildcards. The next demo is to show that there's also some keywords around dealing with errors. And in this particular case, I have a column here where I do have a lot of errors in there. And this works for the English version of, or currently works for the English version of Excel. If you need it for another language, just let me know and I'll take care of that and get that done as well. So you can see that now I'm only getting the ones that have errors. Of course, I can say not errors and it will give me everything else. There's also a way to get only the blanks. So that's also an operator. So these are all the blanks. So if I want the errors and the blanks, I can specify those two criteria and I get that. And of course I can say I want neither of those and just put an exclamation point in front, and it will filter all of that out. Yeah, this is that's basically ListLizer. Switching back here, ListLizer is available in the Microsoft Marketplace. When you sign in for the first time, you get a trial period of 30 days before you even need to worry about subscriptions. But after that, it is available on a subscription basis. The price of List Slicer is similar to a cup of coffee at a cafe in the US per month per user. And the first 30 days of a subscription is free. And if you pay yearly, there's a discount on top of that. The way it's transacted is you can use either a credit card in Microsoft App Source to pay for it, or you can actually get it billed on your Azure subscription. So it's very convenient in terms of how to pay for it. If you go to appsource.microsoft.com, and I'll just switch over so you can see that. AppSource is the marketplace. There is, if we search for List Slicer, we can see that there's two things here. One is the add-in, and then there's a subscription offer. And it's the subscription offer that actually gives you the subscription. And I'm not going to give any feedback right now, but let me just see if I can open this, and so you can see the offer. And this will take you through setting up the payment and so on for that. I'm in Denmark right now, so that's why it's showing the subscription price in kroners at with a lot of decimals on. Not the most the best rounding of the price there. Okay. Any questions about List Slicer?
Oh yeah, you got a few. So let's go back to okay. So I think we've answered the question on why it's on preview is because it is on a trial. So is there on the List Slicer when you type something new into the list, it's not applied. You have to hit apply. Is there any way for you to actually show that the changes have not been applied yet?
Not currently, no.
Okay,
but that's a great improvement.
There you go. Jakob's making notes. As far as case sensitivity, my experiments with this is that List Slicer is like Excel, not case sensitive. Is there any way of actually being able to do a case sensitive search in List Slicer?
I believe in pivot tables it is actually case sensitive.
Okay.
And well, it by default it's case insensitive. However, if you go, let's try to do this and say we have socks as part of this as well. And if I go and I refresh this data, why didn't I get well, I got socks. Oh yeah. I don't know why I think
maybe make it SOX. Let's spell it the American way or something like that, just to get a unique item, because I have a feeling that there's other socks in there, aren't there?
Yeah, there's and maybe this is there you go. But I also need to go and take one of the other one and say like this, right? And then the question is, what is it that I get? Well, I get both that and that. Well, actually,
yeah,
this is really interesting. So there's
I think the issue with the pivot table is that Excel doesn't see things as case sensitive, nor does Power Pivot. Power Query does, but when you land it into Excel, I think in the pivot table you're going to get the first instance of what was ever in the list. That's the way it's going to be cased. It sees them as the same.
Yeah.
The question would be, if you had all lowercase socks, would you be able to actually pick out the difference between a lowercase SOX and an uppercase SOCKS by going for that first letter?
Yeah. Good question. You see that this is not working. Actually, there is equal, which should be doing a case sensitive search. But if the pivot table doesn't support that, then you're kind of in trouble there. But I think that if you have, I think there's I believe there's when you have the pivot table on top of an OLAP data source, that if the data is there, it will actually do the search correctly and pick it up. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I'll have to play around and test that. I'm gonna throw another question that's not in the chat. Is when I know how to get your first list slicer is basically going to add-ins and saying, hey, I want to add a list slicer. How do I get a second one into my file? Because when I go to add-ins, it's not giving me that option anymore. It's already there. So how do I get a second list slicer in the same workbook?
You just use the same one. So this is the one that's there in my add-ins, and if you click that, you get a second one. So that's one way of getting a second one. The other way of getting a second one is just copy paste. So now you have three.
I'll say it's weird because when I go to home and click on add-ins, oh, okay, now it is showing up on there. It wasn't showing up the first time, which is strange. So, all right, fair enough. I don't know if it's possible for you, but I'd love to see it on the insert dialog or on the insert tab, a new button once it's installed to say insert new list slicer, because that's where my regular slicers are.
So would I. That's the type of add-in that I'm using is a content add-in, and the content add-ins do not yet support ribbon extensibility.
Gotcha.
Which would be required. That's only a thing that you can do with task pane add-ins.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Fair enough.
But that would be that would be like having it, right here with the other types of slicers would be very convenient.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
All right, next question you've got from Ron on this one says, I'm sure you're aware of the new regex formulas that are being rolled out. I knew there was going to be a regex question as soon as you saw parcel matching. Are you considering putting regex pattern matching into list slicer?
It's already using regex to do the wildcards, so it's not too far away to add that as well. I would need some examples of that, I think, before I can move on to that. So I would encourage you to just send me mail about the scenario or contact me on LinkedIn, and then we can have a discussion about the scenario for this.
Perfect.
I'd like to understand that a little bit better.
Donald had to run, but it sounds like he has asked for admin approval to be able to use it. So there you go.
Great. Awesome.
Henry's asked, I think this is probably similar to my question, was how to work with multiple slicers for multiple fields. So insert multiple slicers. There you go. Yeah. Question from Ron. Is there a non-corporate rate? $43 a year is a significant fraction of the price of a consumer Office 365 subscription.
Yeah. Not currently, but something that I'm considering.
Okay. Another question is, would Microsoft consider adding this to the base functionality if there's enough interest in it? I guess the question is, he's asking, is this a private development or is the money for this going to Microsoft?
This is separate, completely separate from Microsoft. This is something I'm doing on my own time, not related to what Microsoft is doing.
So if Microsoft had enough interest, is there any chance that they would do something like this in the product, or do you figure it's just probably out of scope?
There's always a chance that they would. If this, you could see them do that if this becomes very, very popular, because then it sort of signals a strong need for functionality that are similar to this. But I can't speak to what Microsoft is planning in this area.
There you go. I'm just going to throw you a quick comment. I love the pattern matching on these things, Jakob. I know this is something that we talked about before it existed, and I think it's especially with the not element in there. I think, and the blanks and the errors, very cool. Well done.
Yeah.
Another question from Henry: Does this add-on work with normal slicers on charts as well? I mean, it works on data sources.
Yeah, it works on pivot tables, and order filters. It currently does not work on pivot charts.
Although, if you're building a pivot chart in Excel, if it's not the data model based, it has to have a pivot table associated with it anyway.
Yeah.
which means you hook the list slicer to the pivot table, and it now
Yes.
pivots the pivot chart, no problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yes.
the only place where you would potentially break that is if you build a pivot table directly, or pivot chart directly against the data model without building your pivot table first, which I actually recommend people don't do anyway. So
Yeah.
For what's
But
worth anyway.
I would encourage you to try it out. And if you uncover a scenario that I haven't thought about, I'm happy to look further into that and add it to list slicer, or try to add it to list slicer.
Awesome. And I think that wraps up all the questions at this point.
That's great, because I think that we have talked enough about list slicer for now, but I wanted to also give you an overview of how to actually develop these things. So let me just quickly switch gears over to, the presentation again. To the second part of this, which is how do you actually develop these things? And as Ken mentioned, this add-in list slicer is a modern Excel add-in, and I just copied in 2 slides that Microsoft is using to explain what a modern Office add-in is and what the benefits are of that. About a decade ago, this was introduced as a new option for how to develop add-ins, in addition to what was already there at that point, the ability to build add-ins with VBA or with VSTO or Visual Studio Tools for Office, or with C++ add-ins to Excel. Modern add-ins, they use standard web tools. It's basically developing a web app. So everything that applies to web development also applies to these add-ins. You build them once, and then you can run them in all of the Excel endpoints, Windows, Mac, web, and they can integrate with Microsoft 365. List Slicer also does that, because that is how it will, after the sign-in, will get your profile so that we will know who you are and what organization you're from. And it also streamlines the sort of life cycle of the add-in in terms of how the add-in gets deployed to users and how updates are managed and so on. There's nothing you need to do when I publish a new version of List Slicer. Similar to a web page, you will get the updated version right away. That is something that is in the framework. Very, very basically, an add-in has 2 parts of it. There's a web app that's built using JavaScript or TypeScript. It uses what is called the JavaScript API between the web app and Office, or Excel in this particular case. It is hosted, the files are hosted on a web server that then and those files get downloaded to the Excel client, and they are run in a sandbox. And everything that's available to you as a web developer, you can use inside of that add-ins in terms of the different technologies. And you can combine this with also using server-side technologies. So List Slicer uses both client-side code, like, for example, the React UI framework. It uses the Fluent UI controls and things like that. But it also uses things like Azure Functions and Azure SQL Server to keep track of the subscriptions. That's the first part. That's the web app. The second part is, in order to describe the add-in to Excel, there's an XML file that we call the manifest that basically configures the add-in, sets up what it can do and what it's allowed to do. It sets up the ribbon for the add-in in case of a task pane. And it's basically the manifest that gets published to the marketplace app source. And it's also, if you don't publish to app source, if you're just developing an add-in for internal use, you can basically take this manifest and upload it to your Microsoft 365 tenant and deploy the add-in that way. But let me just go show you. Here's a little bit of a click-through of what an add-in can do. Most of the add-ins that we have today are task pane add-ins that can do UI inside of Excel, and I'll show you that, and I'll also show you how the ribbon is set up. We have about 15 minutes, so let me just quickly go and show you how to get started doing the development. So one of the requirements, this is, if you're familiar to VBA or possibly also Visual Studio Tools for Office, this is quite a different world of web development. In the web development world, you use things as such as Node. That's being used as well to develop an add-in. So I've installed the latest version of Node on my PC. I've also installed something called the Yeoman generator for Office, and I can go start that and say Yo Office, and it will kick off the generation of a new project for me. So it's basically saying, hey, what do you want to develop? I have different options here, doing a task pane project in different flavors. I could also do a custom functions project, because you can also create add-ins that offers custom functions, and so on. And I'm just going to do the task pane project. Then you can choose what script you want to use, if you want to use JavaScript or TypeScript. And I'm a huge fan of TypeScript because I think it helps me in many, many ways write better code and manage my project. So I'm choosing TypeScript for this. And then I need to specify a name, and I'll just call it the Vancouver user group. And then it says what client application is this for, and I'm choosing Excel. What happens now is that it's starting to set up the project for me. This is going to take a while, and we don't have that much time. So while it's doing that, let me just go and basically just go to Visual Studio Code for a second, because I have a project here that we can take a look at and just review. Visual Studio Code is, if you're not familiar with that, a development or a code editor that's used a lot for web development. And this is what you see now is the project that is being built right now by the Yeoman generator. And we'll go back and modify that. But it's basically a web app project. It has configuration for what packages I need for this to run. It has a definition of how this is going to be built, and then it has the artifacts or files that's needed for the add-in itself. And so there's an HTML page that's going to be shown in the task pane. There's a style, CSS styles that goes with the page, and then there's a TypeScript file that shows the code for the add-in. This add-in doesn't do a lot. It basically just colors a range in a specific color. Let's just go back and look at how far it got. Well, it's not there yet, but we can actually take a look at this instead and just try to run it. So what I'm going to do is just go start a development server for you here. And it's using Node again. And then it's starting the Webpack development server. If you're doing web development, this should all be very familiar to you. If you're not, of course, this is very, very unfamiliar. But you're sort of guided through this in the documentation. So now it's actually starting up and bundling the JavaScript code, and we're ready to go run this. So what I just want to do is to just set a breakpoint so you can see that the code is actually running. So let me just go and then start this. What this does is that it starts Excel, and then it loads, side loads the add-in that we've created, or I have already created into Excel. So just a second, you can see it's side loading that add-in. So the add-in is not published yet or up there, and not sure what's going on here, but let's just try for a second, just close down the other windows and then start it again. I think I just got it kicked off wrong here. Okay. Let's just go debug. We're basically just starting the debugger again. If there's any questions, since we are sort of short on time, I think it would be great if we could take some questions.
Don't have any questions at this point on this one, although I'll ask you, I mean, so Visual Studio Code, is it a requirement to use Visual Studio Code to do this, or can you use full-blown Visual Studio if you happen to have it?
You can use it doesn't really require any particular code editors. Visual Studio Code is the code editor, and then also the thing that runs the commands. You can use Notepad, or you could use Visual Studio if you want to do this as well. It's just a code, basically a code editor. So any code editor you want to run. So now you can see that we got an add-in loaded. This is basically a web browser that sits inside of Excel, and it loads the HTML page with the styles that we have, and it also has one button in the task pane that if I close this, I can open this again, and it will then load the add-in. It has one function, basically is executed when you click run here. What it does, that run function does, is that it executes a function here, and this is where you can see how it is using the JavaScript API, and it's fully. It has a fairly particular programming model where you use asynchronous programming. So you are building up a batch of commands. So in this case, I have a command that says get the selected range. So this will now be the selected range. Like if I switch over, whatever I select that's what it's getting there. And then it says go get the address for that. But by the way, also while you're at it, set the color to that range to yellow. And let me just write some code so you can see that Visual Studio Code have IntelliSense for all of the objects that are in that model. So once it knows it's a range, you can address the format, and you could say, oops, you could say the fill color should be blue. And so that's sort of how you do the editing. Visual Studio Code knows about what the object model is, and if I go back here, it should have auto-loaded in, so that change is now done without me restarting Excel at all. I wonder do we have time to just go through how to add a button to the ribbon? I've actually already done. I don't know if that's already done here. Probably not.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
But let me just show you that earlier I talked about this manifest, and the manifest is really the definition of the add-in, and also the way that Excel finds where to download the different files for the add-in. And there is the button that's currently there in the add-in is defined here as an action button, and I've already prepared this in advance. So I can take this button here and just paste that XML in to my manifest here, as that was not the right place to put it. I need to put it as a new control here. So you can see that I'm defining a button, there's an action button, and instead of opening the task pane, I say execute a function in the code. I need to do a couple of other things because I need to say something about what the label is for this. So I need to add a label. So now I can say color this yellow, and I need to also put in, a longer string for the tooltip. Also in the manifest, and this can be used. You can do translations so that it can work in different languages and so on. The last thing I need to go do is I need to go to a different file called commands.ts that actually has the code for this. And there's also already some code that is just placeholder code, so I'm just overriding that with the code that I want executed. In this, you can see that there's this action that's actually, there's some binding here that's happening so that my action gets bounded to a function in JavaScript. And it does the excel.run and gets the selected range, sets the colors, and then it does this context.sync, which actually says go execute the batch of commands. That's not currently shown here. So what I need to do for it to read the manifest again is just to close up Excel and then go back here and start Excel once more. Once I do that, it will sideload the new manifest that I created with the button. And crossing my fingers, you can see that I now have in my task pane 2 commands. One is the show task pane, and the other one is color yellow. And I could have created a completely new tab on the ribbon if I wanted to for the add-in. But if I go and crossing my fingers, it should color this yellow. Oops, yes, and it colored it yellow. So now you see that the command button color yellow is hooked up with the code that got executed. I'm wondering if I can actually try to show that stop it in the debugger. Yes, it can, if you during your development you can do debugging using Visual Studio Code and go inspect and the state of things here and sort of step through your code and so on. Good. That's basically my demos of how to get started. Of course, there's all sorts of things related to this. We just touched a little bit of how to get started in doing the development, but there's many more stages to this. Feel free to ask questions about this now, or you're also welcome to reach out to me afterwards, and I can help you get started.
Jakob, I'm going to. I've already answered this in chat, but I'm curious to get your comment on this one. So Henry has asked in a corporate context rather than a marketplace context where you're pushing it out to consumers. Is there a case for using this add-in route via instead just doing something like VBA for Excel models that we've done for years? Why would a corporate environment switch to using this framework instead?
I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier in terms of some of the benefits there. I think if you have a team that's more familiar with web development, then they may be familiar with VBA or VSTO, C# development, then this is maybe an avenue to go down. It may be that. So that's one thing. The other thing is this runs on Excel for Windows and it runs on Mac and for the web. So if you need Mac and web and have that among your users, this is the way to actually create an add-in like that. And also, I think just deploying it. I know that many large organizations may have things where they can easily roll out software to all clients, but there's nothing installed on the client. It all comes down, it's all downloaded to the client when you use it. So managing updates of this is a lot easier.
Yeah, I just want to sort of supplement.
I hope that gave some. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to supplement that one, Jakob. And I mean, I was just dealing with an organization where they have a VBA add-in that they actually have deployed to 11,000 people inside their organization. And the question comes down to, how do you release an update? Because, if you don't get to everybody's desktop or get that thing copied or installed or whatever else, that becomes a big issue. So they were dealing with two things. Number one was trying to figure out, is the source code, how do we deal with version control in the source code? Because VBA is not good at that. GitHub is unbelievable at that, which is built into the coding environment they're using.
Yeah.
When I'm building my Comet and Monkey Tools, we use VB.net for it. We have that integrated with GitHub to get that source control. And that is like something that I desperately wish that VBA actually had, but I don't see ever coming. The second part of it, though, is that even in that deployment mechanism inside the Comet world, we've got a way where we prompt people to say, please install it. But there's nothing that we can force people to do short of time bombing their code. And in this environment, it just happens. Like, it's the update's going to be deployed. It just is. You don't have to say yes. You don't have to say no. It just shows up. So those two components to me are absolutely massive in the grand scheme of things. I wish in VB.net I had the ability to do the web stuff. Mac is not really my worry, but I see that as being a very strong component with the framework. Having said that, as much as I'm going to say great things about this framework, Jakob, I also have my reservations on some, is that the framework is not complete. There are definitely things that are missing that we can't do that we can do in VBA and COM, and that's a major concern of mine in some of the areas that I play. So, there's positives and negatives to both, is really what I'm saying.
I think that that's completely correct, that with the API that you have available in VBA or in COM, you can access everything that's available in Excel for Windows, but every function in Excel for Windows is not available in the other endpoints necessarily yet, which means that the API cannot get to it. And the team that's doing the JavaScript API have chosen to say that they only support functions that are available in all of the endpoints. So, for example, in your case, where you do a lot of things with Power Query, and you also do a lot of things with the data model or with Power Pivot, well, Power Pivot is only available in Excel for Windows, so there's no API, no JavaScript API for that. That's a choice that was made. You can, of course, debate that, and
I
so
do.
on, and so on. But I want to say that a lot of the things that I've seen people make in VBA and even with COM is actually available with the JavaScript API. Again, if this is something that you are interested in developing with or getting started with, and you are in doubt about whether it can be done and so on, feel free to reach out to me and we can have a discussion about whether it's feasible or not with the API. I just opened up the list slicer project, which of course is a much a bigger project than the starter project. But one of the things that you talked about was, there's full integration with Git into VS Visual Studio Code. So you can see that I actually have a commit that is pending that I can do. Once I do that commit, it takes about 5 minutes, and then the change is deployed to everyone using List Slicer, because GitHub takes care of building the project and deploying it to the Azure website that I have. And that's just an example of things are a lot easier in that sort of life cycle regard when it comes to the modern web add-ins. Good. Let me see. Here's the slide deck. Just, I think it's time to wrap up, if I'm not mistaken. I put in some resources here. We should probably post those to the group as well, in terms of where you can go to get started with the Office add-ins. And then I also put in my contact information and LinkedIn information, and I'm more than happy to do a call with any of you if you have questions related to either List Slicer and what it can do, and also to developing modern add-ins in general.
I'm just going to take this one final question we've got from Henry on this, and he's asking, does this mean that the add-in is available while online? How does it work offline in a client desktop?
I've never tried it to use it in the desktop offline, but it should load. It should load the resources that it needs from the cache. I encourage you to try it out and see what happens. But of course, if it does not have the resources, then it can't load it from the web browser cache. But it's worth trying.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that was the last question, so let's wrap it up for today then. Thanks, Jakob, for your time on this and showing us both the List Slicer and also the process to go through and sort of get started with building these add-ins. I really appreciate it. As you know, I mean, I've been developing VBA and COM for a long time. I have not gone into this world, even though I know you want me to. So it's fantastic to sort of see what's involved there. I really appreciate you coming back and being part of our meetup group here. So. We will get the recording of the session posted, as I say, in the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll get that notified through the Meetup group when it's available. Jakob, am I able to grab a copy of your slides so that we can post that on the group link as well for people so they can get all your wonderful links here?
Absolutely. I'll make sure you get that. And thank you so much to everyone for listening and asking good questions and so on. Keep them coming.
Awesome. And I just want to say for everybody that's listening to this, Jakob's genuine when he says he will engage with you and answer questions. He really will. So if this is an area that you want to get into, he's a great resource to reach out to. So don't hesitate to take advantage of that. So thanks again, Jakob. I really appreciate it. We'll sign off for this time here, and I'm sure we'll have you back to look at things as they grow up and as you add even more features to List Slicer, because I know you've got a big list of things you want to add. So great stuff. Thanks very much. Till next time, folks.
Thank you.